Okay, so hopefully you were able to get through 10.4. I know I kept saying something about 10.5. We're going to come back to 10.5 later. I still don't know officially what's going on. I've heard the deal about public school, but I haven't heard anything definite about us. So we're jumping into 10.6, and that will allow you to also be able to do your worksheets. But I'm doing this video first, and then the video for your worksheets will come later. Okay, I'm going to make 2 separate videos for that. So this section is 10.6, solving quadratic equations by the quadratic formula. So 10.6, solve quadratic equations by the quadratic formula. Okay, so actually really quick, if this video is really loud, sorry, I got a new microphone to use as I record videos and stuff, and so it's kind of making my voice a lot louder than it was before. So if it sounds like I'm screaming at you, just know that that's why, and that you'll just need to turn the volume down on your end a little bit. Okay, so we have a quadratic formula, and I kind of mentioned it briefly in the video about your worksheets last time because you had to use a chunk of it as part of your worksheet. But the quadratic formula let me write this down for you. The quadratic formula. Okay, so with this, the solutions, okay, so if I do SOLNS, just as a reminder, that means solutions, of the quadratic equation and remember EQ is equation AX squared plus BX plus C is equal to 0, R. Now, just as a reminder, okay, we've seen this form a lot. Okay, we didn't necessarily do a whole lot with actually solving these equations before, setting them equal to 0, okay, but anytime we factored something, we would have been able to set it equal to 0 and solve for it. But this is just an easy formula to plug it into. There's a poster in the back of my classroom about it, because I just leave it up, but you have to know this formula, okay? X is equal to negative b plus or minus, okay, that's where our 2 solutions come from, is the fact that it's plus or minus. Square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, where a is not equal to 0 and b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, okay? So when we take a root of something, can't have a negative, and a can't be 0 because we can't divide by 0. If you don't remember why, ask Siri and she'll tell you about Cookie Monster and No Friends. Okay. All that being said, this is the formula that you absolutely have to know. Okay, you memorize it. I think like something called like Schoolhouse Rock or something. I might be dating myself, but I'm telling you how old I am. But Schoolhouse Rock, I think it is, makes a video to help you memorize this. It's I'm not going to sing it for you, but you can look it up on YouTube, or I'll try to share a link to it for you or add it to that Algebra 1 channel that I've set up on my YouTube account. So, anyways, I'll get to that if I can and if I remember, but if not, just Google Schoolhouse Rock, quadratic formula, and it'll help you memorize it. So your book gives you several examples and walks you through what plugging this stuff in looks like, okay, but I don't see a point in just giving you stuff that's already in the book when you have your book in front of you. The one thing that they do mention on 673 is their concepts for actually solving quadratic equations that I kind of mentioned. Factoring, the section that we skipped, 10.3, would have showed you we could do it by graphing. 10.4, we did it by finding square roots. Okay, so that was the last section. The section we've skipped temporarily is completing the square, 10.5, and 10.6 is what we're on now, so using the quadratic formula. If all else fails, the quadratic formula works. So, if no other method works, go with that one. Okay? But, essentially, you're only responsible for part of this section at this point in time. So I'm going to do several even ones for you out of this section, and then you'll be responsible for the odd ones. So 3 through 11 says to use the quadratic formula to find the roots of the equation. Round your solutions to the nearest hundredth if necessary. Okay, so use the quadratic equation to find the roots of the equation. Okay, aka to solve the equation. Round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so something like 3 through 11 is already set up in the correct form for you. So we'll just start out with number 4. So 4x squared minus x minus 18 is equal to 0. Okay, just as a reminder, okay, when we have something set up this way, okay, remember a is in front of the squared term, okay, b is in front of the x term, and c is the constant by itself. Okay, and remember the signs go with them, okay, when you do stuff. So, we have this formula here, and I would say, to get used to it, write it down every single time. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, chant it as you walk around the house, something. But you have to know it. Alright. If it comes down to a quiz or a test or something like that in class, okay, like I said, I don't know what that's going to look like, but if it did come down to that, typically the way I do with formulas is I allow you to write it down for a bonus point, and then I'll check it for you and let you know if it's right or wrong, so that way you're not using the wrong formula. But, anyways. Alright, so now I'm going to take stuff and I'm going to plug it in here. So now I'm just literally plugging in numbers. Okay, but I have to keep up with these signs that are on here. So I have negative b. Well, b is negative 1. So in parentheses, negative 1. Plus or minus the square root of, well, b again is negative 1. So negative 1 squared. Minus 4 times a is 4. Times c is negative 18. All over 2 times a is 4. Alright, so now I just need to work with all this stuff here. So negative times negative 1 is positive 1. So I have 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared is 1. Now, here's where you might want a calculator. You're welcome to use a calculator. I know 4 times 4 is 16. And that times 18, I just on my calculator, is 288. So it's going to be 1. Now, I had a negative and a negative, making that positive. So 1 plus 288 all over 2 times 4 is 8. And you do get to use a calculator for this section for, obviously, that's really the only way you can get your hundredths place. Like, you don't have to do it that way, but that's kind of my recommendation for you. Okay, so this is going to be the square root of 289. So it says 1 plus or minus the square root of 289 all over 8. Now, here I get two answers, okay? So keep in mind, back when we did stuff and we were taking the square root of it, I said, so last week, I said, there's two answers for everything, okay? There are always two answers. There's two answers here. So I like to go ahead and split it out and say 1 plus the square root of 289 over 8 is equal to, and then 1 minus the square root of 289 over 8 is equal to. Okay? So, plugging it in my calculator here. See if I can do it on this side and make it readable. Alright, so I have 1 plus the square root of 289 over 8. So 1 plus second square root, 289. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get that answer is 18. So that's going to be 18 over 8. So I guess the square root of 289 is something we should know. Just curious what it is now. Making sure. Oh, 17. Now, technically speaking, since I know that, I can just do 1 minus 17, but I can also do it on my calculator. 1 minus the square root of 289, negative 16 over 8. Well, I should recognize 16 over 8 is 2. It's negative, so it's negative 2. And for this other one here, 18 divided by 8 is 2.25. So those are my two answers here. Okay, so with those problems, always, always, always two answers. Okay? Let's see here about doing another one. Take this page away. Maybe. Okay. Let's see, number 8. Let's see what that looks like. So 8, negative 2n squared minus 5n plus 16 is equal to 0. So, again, negative 2 is A, negative 5 is B, 16 is C, and yet again I'm going to write my formula. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay, just kind of find a way to chant it, okay, kind of like I'm doing. That's kind of how I memorized it and have been able to learn it over time. Okay, so that means over here I'm plugging in negative B. So negative times negative 5 is B plus or minus square root of, well, B is negative 5. Negative 5 squared minus 4 times A is negative 2 times C is 16 all over 2 times A is negative 2. Okay, so now negative times negative 5 is positive 5. So 5 plus or minus the square root of, well, negative 5 squared is 25. So that becomes positive. These two negatives here are going to cancel out and become positive, so plus. Now, 4 times 2 is 8 times 16. Okay, I probably could do that in my head, but 8 times 16, I'm just going to do it on the calculator, save some time, it's 128. All over. Now, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Okay, so 128 plus 25. So I need to do that. So 5 plus or minus the square root of 153 over negative 4. Okay, so again, I got to split it into 2. So I end up with 5 plus the square root of 153 over negative 4, or I have 5 minus the square root of 153 over negative 4. So, on my calculator, put it over here so everybody can maybe see it. See if the lighting is good enough that you can kind of tell what it says. Alright, so 5 plus the square root of 153 is 17.369, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that in my calculator and go ahead and divide that by negative 4. So that gives me negative 4.34. Okay, remember 2 decimal places. And then the other one, 5 minus the square root of 153 divided by negative 4 is 1.84. And those are my 2 answers. Okay, so since that's just really plugging stuff in, that's all I'm going to do of that type. We're going to move down to the next type. And obviously when we go through the worksheet video, you'll get more of an example of what that looks like there in those videos as well. Okay, so now we're moving into the next type. So it's the same thing except for these problems are not going to be equal to 0. Okay, and we have to be in this form in order to do these problems. They have to be equal to 0. So we have to move everything over to one side. So essentially the same instructions as before. So let's start with something kind of easy. 14. 3x squared minus 4 is equal to 11x. Okay? Well, the question is everything on the same side? Is it equal to 0? Those are the 2 things to look at. And the answer to both of those questions are no. So I need to move that 11x over. So in order to do that, I need to subtract it from this side over to this side. Okay, so minus 11x, okay, just so we can see what's going on. So 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 is equal to 0. Now the question is everything on the same side? Is it equal to 0? The answer to both of those questions is yes, meaning I can go down and I can use my formula. So this is A, so A is 3, B is negative 11, and C is negative 4. Again, with the formula, negative B plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. And now I'm just plugging in. To this point, you might be tired of me doing that, but negative B is negative 11 plus or minus the square root of negative 11 squared minus 4 times 3 times, 3 is A, C is negative 4, all over 2 times A is 3. This is positive 11 plus or minus the square root of, well, I know that's 121. Trying to save some room here. So this is 121, and then 4 times 4 is 16. Okay, these negatives become positive. Times 3. 16 times 3 is 48. Plus 121 is 169. Which maybe you recognize that to be 13. So this is 11 plus 13 over 6. Which is equal to, or 11 minus 13 over 6, which is equal to something. So 11 plus 13, 24 divided by 6 is 4. So that's one answer. The other answer, 11 minus 13 divided by 6 is, so in this case, it's minus 0.33, and it's repeating, so I'm going to put the bar over it, okay, because that's negative 2 over 6, which is negative 1/3, okay, or negative 0.33 repeating. Okay, so again, 2 answers. Okay, so I'm kind of flying through this. After I plug it in, I'm kind of just flying through the math, because that's just really, you should just be able to do math there. And I am allowing you to use a calculator for this. Okay, this is one section where you do get to use it. Let's do another one. Let's see. 18. Alright, we'll do about 2 more, I think. We'll do 18 and 24, and then we'll be done. Alright, 18. Three g squared minus 6g minus 14, is equal to 3g. Now, is everything on the one side is equal to 0? No, it is not. Okay, even though I have a g over here and this looks like it's the right form, it's not equal to 0. Okay, so I got to move this over. So to do that, I have to subtract 3g from both sides, so minus 3g minus 3g. Okay, so I still have 3g squared. Now, minus 6g minus 3g is negative 9g. Minus 14 is equal to 0. Now, is everything on the same side? Is everything equal to 0? Answer is yes. So, here we go again. By this point, hopefully you're saying it with me. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So, now we just need to plug in, and then we're just going to solve down super quick after that. So, b is negative 9. So, minus negative 9 plus or minus square root of negative 9 squared minus 4 times a is 3, c is negative 14, all over 2 times a is 3. So I'm just going to run through this math pretty quick. Negative times negative, positive 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared is 81. And then 14 times 4 times 3, those become positive, is 168. So plus 81 is the square root of 249, all over 2 times 3 is 6. So that gives me 9 plus the square root of 249 over 6. 9 minus the square root of 249 over 6. So 9 plus the square root of 249 is divided by 6 is 4.13. And 9 minus the square root of 249 divided by 6 is minus 1.13. Okay, so I'm just plugging in my calculator there. I've done that a couple times on the screen, so hopefully you can do that. Okay, mainly once you get this stuff plugged in, you can use your calculator, and your calculator will do the rest. Excuse me. Alright, last one. 24. 5w squared plus 4 is equal to w plus 6. Alright. Everything on the same side is all equal to 0. No to both questions. So I'm going to move the w over and move the 6 over. And I'm going to go ahead and do it all in one step. Okay, so minus w minus 6 minus w minus 6. Okay, so 5w squared. There was no w's here, so just minus w. There is a 4, so 4 minus 6 is negative 2, is equal to 0. Now everything's on one side. It's all equal to 0. Alright, so here we go. Chant it with me. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Alright, so now b is negative 1 again, so b is yet again negative. So negative times negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared minus 4 times a is 5, c is negative 2, all over 2 times 5. So this is positive 1 plus or minus the square root of, well, that's 1. Let's see, 4 times 5 is 20, times 2 is 40. It's positive. So square root of 41, all over 10. So 1 plus the square root of 41 over 10 1 minus the square root of 41 over 10. So this first one, 0.74. Second one, whoops, messed up on my calculator, is minus 0.54. And there's the answers to that one. Okay, so the biggest thing is just moving everything over properly and just plugging it in and paying attention to your signs. Okay, that's the thing that if you mess up on, that's literally where it's going to be. Okay, because you can use your calculator for the rest of it, but you have to be able to plug it in and set it up. So that being said, okay, your homework for this section is 3 through 25 odd. Okay, 3 through 25 odd. Now don't forget, you also have worksheets that go along with this. I'll get that video out to you possibly tomorrow. If not, then probably Wednesday at the absolute latest. And don't forget, all this stuff is due next Sunday at midnight. Okay, or this coming Sunday at midnight, I should say. Hope everyone is still staying safe and healthy as much as possible.